We are live.
Live Senate Appropriations, going through the FY27 budget. And one of the things in the budget this year is the Pay Act. So we wanted to learn more about that. And so we have Commissioner Pathy out and talk about that, but we're going to talk about the reclassification project and how that relates to part of it. So it might just kind of blend into the two conversations. I know you had some slides that say Pay Act. I don't know. Oh, then we have, if you want to do the class, do you need to do the classification while Doug is available?
Yeah,
Right.
we could do that. So, and Doug was going to put out some slides. He was going to actually share his computer with the slides
Okay,
for the classification.
He's on.
All right.
Okay. So I'll let you introduce yourself for the record and give the presentation.
My name is Beth Fastige. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources. And with me is Douglas Pine, and he is a director of lots of things in HR. But he is here today representing our modernization of career architecture and pay project. And because at the state we like to have acronyms for calling this the MAP project, which is pretty cool, because what we're doing with the new classification system is we're creating this big map and mapping jobs into various structures. So it's a great name for the project. So just to kind of start out, to kind of level set, Act 27 funding last year, we got $1.575 million general fund for the classification modernization project. And after a competitive bid process, we awarded the contract to Mercer Consulting. And so we contracted with them, and we began working with them right after the money was approved. So in July of 2025. We are now about 9 months into the expected 24-month project, and we are meeting our project milestones. We've spent 20% of the project budget, or about $304,000. We're doing this to modernize our state government's classification and compensation systems to support our recruitment, management, and retention of well-qualified and a diverse workforce. The objectives of the project are to organize jobs, map them into a clear, logical job architecture that reduces the number of job classes, facilitates career advancement, and promotes internal consistency and equity, and simplifies the administration of this program. We're implementing a modern approach to work measurement to accurately assess our job roles, and developing a comprehensive compensation framework, which will include a philosophy, pay structures, and administrative guidelines, considering both internal equity as well as external market competitiveness. And then another big part of the project will be to train and educate managers and employees on the new system to build understanding, consistency, and trust. Our goal, again, is to establish a standardized, meaningful career architecture and pay structure that supports our employees' career goals and our state's recruitment and retention goals. So we're working in collaboration with stakeholders across the executive branch of state government, and also more external stakeholders as well, including we've met with joint fiscal office on this project, and then we've also talked to judiciary some, and of course our labor partners are a big part of this project as well. This will be the first major review and update of our classification system and compensation since 1984, so over 40 years. And we are definitely probably one of the last states kind of initiating this effort, and so it's well needed.
Was all the state at one point on the list?
No, everyone's has their own. A few states maybe use Willis, but Willis is kind of unique. It was an offshoot of a very well-used system called the Hay system. And it was kind of Mr. Willis worked for Hay, and then he went by and made his own instead of I'm not going to say one-man shop, but he created his own system. But it was based on that. So it's very similar to the measurement tool that was widely used at the time, but most organizations are moving away from that type of a system. And so this project will cover our classified employees across the executive branch.
Are we moving to something that other states are doing, or it's too early to say?
It'll be customized for us. So we're in the position measurement tool called Willis, which is outdated, hard to understand and use, and doesn't have any technical support. Our employees don't have a predictable, clear view of their career and salary trajectory. Budgetary impacts in our current system are unpredictable. In fiscal year 25, the estimated annual cost of our classification reviews was $8.2 million.
These are the RC.
The RFRs, yeah, requests for reclassification, classification review. And so those can be initiated by management, also by unions or by the employee. And because it can be initiated anytime, it's hard to predict what the financial impact is going to be. And we don't know the financial impact until after we do the analysis.
And HR does the analysis.
Yes.
And this is 8.2 million. That's the cost of the result of the HR, not your administration.
Correct. That's the result that employees, above and beyond the raises that we'll see from Pay Act, employees got based on either generally from moving from one pay grade to another. So some of it was a promotion, and some of it is actually looking at the job and saying, okay, this job should be classified higher or lower or the same. But
And if you do one, you got to do them all.
If you're doing a class review, you have to do them all at the same time. And we have a whole time period for that when those are due. Those are due at the end of the summer, and then we have 3 months to get those all done. So it's a big chunk of work that we do.
And this should lower the number of RFRs.
Our goal is to reduce the number of classifications overall and then reduce the number of requests for reclassification. Yeah. One of the things that we have is we have over 200 job classification, 2,000 job classifications, which is really an unwieldy number. There's no way we could redo those we can't look at those every year, even every 5 years would be a huge challenge. There's many employee-centered, department-specific, and redundant job classes, which lead to inconsistencies in pay assignments and pay within and across departments for comparable work. Because if you're doing an administrative assistant, say in human resources, then you're looking at an administrative assistant somewhere else. You might not be doing those all at the same time. Anyway, so our goal is definitely to get consistency across state governments. The process we have now and the system we have now is pretty well disliked by everybody for various reasons. So it is time to do something new. So here's how we're doing it. We've got 4 phases. We completed phase 1. So it was basically examining our current classification and compensation system. We did a lot of stakeholder interviews, really got a lot last fall. And that helped us align the project and the scope with our vendor. And we are now in phase 2. We're establishing what is called the job architecture and developing career leveling guide, mapping existing job classes into the architecture, and leveling the new job descriptions for each new title. So we're doing that with about 1,000 job titles, and then we'll be conducting working sessions with state across the government to validate job structure and the mapping and the job descriptions that we've created. So we're partway through phase 2. Once we get to phase 3, we'll be doing a market analysis of 750 benchmark jobs. There'll be recommended pay structures and recommended market adjustments and recommended best design and alternatives. At that point, it's obviously there's financial considerations, there's collective bargaining considerations. So that phase 3 is not just it's not just a report that we get. It's then thinking about how do we implement, what parts do we want to implement. So there's phase 2 looks short, but it could be a little longer than that. And then the phase 4 is recommended revisions to our our current compensation administration guidelines and identify areas for improvement. So once we get that information, then we make recommendations and see where to go next.
And the funding that we provided last year is good enough to get one, the phase we're in, or is it?
The funding, $1.575 million, is to cover, is the cost of the contract.
The
So
whole-
it's, yeah,
Through phase 4.
it's the cost, it's the vendor cost. So that's it. And then I know Doug Pine has been moving the slides and it's so long, so I don't know. He's available to ask questions as well, or if I missed anything on his scope, he can speak up as well. But happy to answer questions.
So any financial impact will just be the impact of the change to the job, basically.
Right. Mhm.
That's like unpredictable at this point.
Right. And if we, in the end, it's,
That's what I'm impressed with, though.
it's highly
Yeah.
unlikely that it's highly unlikely that our vendor will recommend, exactly what we have, like a pay structure, like, you're pretty familiar with our classified pay structure, but we have a pay chart with different job grades and then 15 steps, and that's pretty much what most folks have. And is that a modern pay structure? And whether we know it or not, what do we have, what will we have money to implement, and what is something that we could agree to with our labor partners as well? So those steps are down the road. We need to.
That's just separate than the classification system.
That's kind of cool. It's moving kind of beyond just the classification piece to a full modernization. But the classification piece, that getting rid of the Willis system and moving into this new Java architecture and leveling guide and new mapping, that is that's the first phase, and that's what we really it's really important that we move forward with that.
And you need to do that to do the whole pay chart if you want to
Yep.
keep a pay chart.
Right.
And then with even the question of whether you do steps or do it a different way, that all could be in play.
That all could be in play. As he says, it's unlikely that the consultant would recommend exactly what we have, but also unlikely that exactly what the consultant would recommend would be agreeable to either the administration or our labor partners.
Will the recommendations from the contractor be public? Like the contractor said this, HR thinks something a little different than the legislature, which side are we?
I think it's somewhat of an iterative process, but we're not there yet. I don't know if I can answer that one.
What was the question?
Question was, will all of this information be public?
Like the recommendations from the contractor, Mercer, will we have those and then also have the administration or HR recommendation to consider both, or would we just have what you recommend after getting the recommendations?
I think we will have a joint recommendation. So we'll work with the consultants to issue a final report with the recommendations.
Yeah. But
Okay.
For everyone to consider.
Anybody have any questions on the reclassifications? So, which I did say at the beginning of the pay act and the budget, no other Senate. Oh, it's fine. There's no other Senate committee that's taking up the pay act. Sometimes government ops does that. So since they're not doing that, it's another reason why we're trying to learn more about it here.
great. So would you like us to move right into pay act?
Yeah, and I don't know if,
Do you want us to?
well, Adam could go up there with you. I saw that Adam, or Commissioner Gresham, had slides. I don't know if you wanted to make a presentation.
I had
You also have.
I have some written comments, but I don't know if I don't want to put together and then we can talk about that. And also I have other folks in the room that can answer questions as well. John Moore, who's our director of labor relations over there. Doug Pine, who does our compensation, is still on remote, and Darren Foster, who works up a lot of the numbers and worked with the joint fiscal office, putting numbers into the bill. Here, so we've got a lot of folks can answer some questions if you
Okay,
need.
yeah, so you don't really have slides, you have
Yeah,
letters. But I'm wondering, what I was hoping to get from is a better understanding of the process.
Yeah.
What it is, kind of what, and I know a little bit of this from talking with Commissioner Gresham, like what's the process? And then I know the committee has some questions that we get into.
and I did provide written testimony that is kind of an overview and the purpose of Pay Act. It's provides funding for pay and benefits in the collective bargaining agreements for fiscal year 27 and 28, and also includes funding and parameters for treatment for employees that aren't covered by the collective bargaining units or collective bargaining agreements. And in the past, Pay Act's either been part of its standalone bill or incorporated in the bid bill. I know here it's in bid bill. Finance and management usually reserves money for Pay Act in the budgeting process, and the appropriation and funding are generally included in Pay Act. And this is generally based on the biennium because we typically negotiate 2-year labor contracts. So we do this once every biennium, and then I encourage you all on behalf of the Department of Human Resources, as this committee, to support Pay Act and to fund our collective bargaining agreements and fund the increases for fiscal year 27 and 28 for our employees that aren't covered by the collective bargaining unit. And I can just run a brief status of our collective bargaining negotiations. We've completed negotiations with the non-management and supervisory bargaining units of the Vermont State Employees Association. An agreement in principle has been reached with the Vermont Troopers Association, but we haven't finalized the language. We haven't completed the negotiations for our corrections bargaining unit. And judiciary and state's attorneys and sheriffs conduct bargaining with their VSEA unit separately, but the funding for these contracts are also included in Pay Act. And we've worked with Ledge Council and the Joint Fiscal Office to come up with the numbers to put into the Pay Act.
So the Pay Act is both all the collective bargain increases plus exempt.
Right. So the collective bargaining agreements are basically included in the appropriation piece. All the money for that is in the appropriation piece, and then in the what you can see laid out there is some of it is elected officials, board members, judges, agency secretaries and commissioners. Some of them have statutory salaries.
Right.
And if the salary itself is in the statute, then that's laid out specifically in the bill. And then for much of the secretaries and commissioners, their maximum salary, actually the base salary is what you're seeing in the Pay Act, and we are authorized to provide them with up to 150% of their base salary through this. So this is what authorizes that. If money wasn't appropriated, there might be some room for some of the secretaries and commissioners for raises if they weren't at the maximum already. And the same with the elected officials or the board members. If for some reason they were not at their maximum salary, then there would be some room there. But because they're statutory salaries, if we want those to increase, then they would be in the pay.
And just to clarify that when we go through all the budgets, the collective bargain benefits are in each agency's budget.
Right. So
Pay Act that also includes that money, or is it just for the exempt?
Pay Act includes
For the upcoming year.
the money for the pay raises for the upcoming year.
But for everybody or for
Everybody.
exempt? Right.
No, for everybody. Pay Act includes. So the base budgets are it's kind of the base, but this is like the extra that we're getting includes the raises. And Adam, maybe I don't know if you want
It's just the money, even though we might have already said like, okay, X agency, we're approving your budget, but in their budget is that money that the Pay Act is where it actually comes from.
Right, and so kind of the simple way to explain it is we give Pay Act for the upcoming budget year. And then that is baked into the base for the next budget year.
Right.
And then the next budget year, we give Pay Act for, the following. So part of it, I mean, reason is that oftentimes when we do the budget, we don't know what the pay is going to be. We make estimates, but collective bargaining may not have concluded. Sometimes it does, or sometimes it doesn't. But the pay act that we give out this spring, actually next month, will be then part of the base amount that departments and agencies budget for next year. So they annualize that in their base.
And one of the things that I just show in my written testimony was just some of the terms. The highlights of our collective bargaining agreements, if you folks are interested in hearing that. And we run through those quickly. Yep. So they're 2-year contracts, beginning July 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2028. July of 2026, there's a 2% what we call across the board increase, plus the continuation of steps. And then in January 2027, another 2% across the board increase, plus the continuation of steps. People aren't going to get double steps, but they are continuing. And then in 2027, it's a 3%, or July 2027, it's a 3-year across the board increase. So one of the things that you see in Pay Act this year, you're going to see 3 columns because there's actually 3 raises. There's a July raise, a January raise, and then another July raise.
Sure.
So another thing is everybody will be on the same holiday schedule. So Juneteenth and Indigenous holidays become official premium pay holidays beginning in July 2026, and then Bennington Battle Day will be eliminated from the list of paid holidays. And this will now with the correction bargaining unit,
Still be a holiday.
it will still be a holiday. If you want to take that day off, it will be either your annual.
Because it goes to Senator Sears.
I know.
It's still a holiday, and I think a lot of employees will take it off.
And it was a popular right because we August.
Right. And no one else had it, so it was actually very,
Yeah,
very.
nobody else.
Yeah, so it's kind of. It was not. I mean, I would say it's nice, but I don't think there's going to be that much complaining because it's 2 holidays for
Get 2 for 1.
And this corrections bargaining unit and Vermont Troopers Association actually already have that on the schedule, so they bargained it last time. So this is catching up.
Okay.
And then we have some changes to benefits for our non-medical vision benefits. That increases to $200 annually, and then several changes for dental benefit, which it makes it a much more competitive benefit. There's not going to be a deductible for dental services. The maximum lifetime for orthodontia is increased to $37.50, and the maximum amount for individuals for dental services for the plan year is increased to $2,000. And then one more thing on annual leave, there's we've raised the cap on annual leave, so people by 20 hours for annual leave. So if you're an employee that doesn't take a lot of your leave and it's kind of a use it or lose it in some instances, you have a little bit more time to use it. That's it.
Do you know what the total dollar number is in that?
Yeah. It's in here.
Your Commissioner Gresham knows.
I have what we submitted in the governor's budget, which is similar to that. It's a little over. Go ahead.
Sorry. There's 23.9 million in general fund, 3 million in transportation fund, and then other funds. Let's see, other funds are able to be appropriated, right? So it's 27 million from special funds, state fund, federal funds, federal funds, and other sources.
So just in a broad sense, it's about $60 million. Half of that, or less than half of that, is general fund. 3 million of that is T fund. Judiciary, 2.5 million. Legislature, I think it's higher than what we submitted. We submitted about 750,000. And then there's roughly, call it 25 to 30 million special ones, which are typically the bank and R, public service department.
Right.
So, yeah, but it's about 60 million total.
And do you want to say, give us a little kind of description of what you do for the exempt pay as separate from the collective bargaining? How that works?
Yep. So that's in Pay Act. So, typically what's been done over the past many years is the legislature provides the authority for the Secretary of Administration for, these are exempt employees that either aren't in a pay plan or, whose salaries are not in statute. Increased by the same across the board increase, or what people think of as a cost of living increase, as our collective bargaining agreements plus 1.9%, which is the average value of a step. So employees also get steps to move through the pay chart. Every employee does get a step every year. If you get a step, it's typically more than 1.9% of your salary, but as I said, you don't get it every year. And as you move further, as you have more tenure, your raise on the steps becomes less and less. So the first several years, it's every year, and then it goes to every 2 years, and then every 3 years for the last couple of years. So that 1.9% value in there for the average annual adjustment ends up being the what's the across the board increase plus that, and that's how we determine how the statutory salaries should be increased.
And that's just in the Pay Act language, that you shall do it that way.
Yeah, that's in the Pay Act language. So that's been historically how we have done it. And then what the Secretary of Administration does for the executive branch is every May sends out a letter and makes a determination based on what she's authorized to do, makes a determination on what treatment is going to be provided. So the last 2 years, even though that the legislature authorized what legislature authorized, I had a chart, but I forgot it. We had 4 in 2020. This year is 3.5%. I think the year before it was 4.5%. But I think that both they and the governor and secretary definitely felt that those are big increases already. So that is what the exempt employees received, rather than that plus the 1.9%. Rather than the governor also did that as well. So if his team or the secretaries weren't going to get that full amount that's allowed in the Pay Act, then he didn't take that as well.
And that's something that Secretary of Administration, the governor, and Commissioner of Finance takes that money and then has to figure out how to spread it to the needs that you have.
Right, and they could use that money for a department that might be in more need, like the Department of Human Resources. They could give that money else.
Is internal service funds.
Is there anything else you want to say, Commissioner Gresham, about the process, or like how saw that you sent us the letter you sent out?
So as I was thinking about what to say, this, I think, opportunistically coincides with the Pay Act memo we send out to agencies and departments, generally the last few days of March, first few days of April. So this letter that you have on your on the committee page is what I circulated to departments and agencies that pretty much describes pretty clearly the process we use for distributing the executive branch general fund Pay Act. And we asked departments and agencies to submit back to us their request for Pay Act by the end of actually this week, I think April 17th. So by April 17th, departments and agencies will send us a memo saying, here's what we need by Deputy ID for Pay Act. We in finance and management do our own analysis of what we believe they will need. And we reach out to them. They often come in to speak with us, and we come to an agreement. But it's their requests and our analysis on top of their requests to figure out what they need. And I'd like to just emphasize that this, for the Pay Act amounts that you see, they're treated differently. It's just important to know that, in that there's a pay act amount in, the budget for the executive branch. There's a pay act amount for the legislative branch, and there's a pay act amount for the judicial branch. The judicial branch and the legislative branch, they just get their pay act. It goes right into their operating budget. For the executive branch, we go through this process whereby we dole it out based on need. So I'm not contacting, for example, the joint fiscal office or the legislature and ask them what they need for pay act. They simply get pay act on, on July 1. And it goes right into their operating budget. Same is true with the judiciary. Within the executive branch departments over which the governor administers, we look at what the need is. And when we look at what the need is, we look at a couple of things. Well, there are a number of inputs, but a couple are very important. And the first input is, what are their vacancies? And what did they budget for vacancies? So if they budgeted roughly a 3% vacancy rate, and we look back over the past 7-8 months, and we see that they're running a 6% vacancy rate, that means that they will have greater vacancies than is in their budget, and they'll have less need for payroll, right? So a department like that would have a lower need, maybe no need, and it just does happen. There are some departments that say, we're good. So that's the first thing. We look at how their payroll is running relative to what they thought it would be. The second thing we look at is we look at what their carry forward was from the prior year. And oftentimes, when we receive memos from departments on asking to renew their spending authority for leftover unobligated money from the prior fiscal year, in other words, carry forward, we oftentimes will ask departments to put aside X amount of their carry forward to use for pay act, thereby saving the state that amount of money that we have to give out for pay act. So we try to be very analytical, very strategic with the use of pay act. And there have been times, I think the first year I was here, maybe the second year I was here, when money was tight, where we actually weren't able to meet all of the pay acts. So we prorated.
Do you ever do that?
That's unusual.
Has it ever been the reverse where you met all the needs and still have pay act money and give it back to the general fund?
Or we carry it forward and we use it for the following years. One good example of that is I remember that corrections received, there was a substantial increase in pay. They were running very high vacancies. So the legislature, the executive branch, we all got together and tried to figure out how we're going to lower the vacancy rate there and get more correctional officers in. Well, one answer to the, or one step we took was we created higher salaries and shift differentials and a whole host of things that John and Beth would be better knowledgeable of. But there's a cost to that. And so we were fortunate in that we had pay act left over from the year before that we could bring to bear to meet that. There are also sometimes mid-year RFRs that come up, or unexpected payroll expenses that are hard to predict. So we use extra pay act for that. We don't often have a lot of pay act money left over, but sometimes it's put to good use.
I'm sure.
But it's just important to note that we're careful with that, and you guys want us to be careful with that. I mean, you want us to use our payroll dollars wisely. So we look at what vacancies are relative to budget, and we look at what prior carry forward we have that we can use. And that generally is used as an offset to just go limit pay. So, and again, we're doing that to be sure.
Well, I have a general concern. I want to talk about that. If you have questions. Oops.
I do, but my questions are more related to the conversation that we had last week, related to particularly the governor's pay, the structure. And I don't know if now is the right time to be asking them. I mean, I do have some questions about some aspects of what you were just describing. So for either the elected officers, et cetera, there's a base, and you're authorized to pay them up to 150% of that base.
For commissioners and secretaries.
Oh, okay. So that does not apply to the governor's position.
No, the governor's salary and the other elected officials, and typically members of boards and commissions like the pre-mountain fair board, and judges, their salaries are actually set in statute. This is
what it is.
And if they say, hey, don't pay me that full salary, we can do that, but we couldn't pay them any more.
Oh, okay. That was my question, because we had talked about, is it a floor? Is it a ceiling? And so it's for those, it's a ceiling.
Right.
And so the 150% doesn't apply to that.
No.
Okay, that's good to know. And then wondering, so we've got a number of positions sort of called out in the Pay Act, but we're not necessarily seeing positions, let's say in the judiciary, called out in the same way. And I guess my question is, my concern, and I said this before and I would say it again, this is not commentary on our current governor. Whatever we're talking about is for the future. It could be for the far future. Like I'm just worried about the structure of it. And so what because there was such a gap between the governor's pay and the next folks on that list. And I was wondering if there well, I can have this conversation offline as well. I'm wondering about if there's comparables in the judiciary or not. And what I mean by comparables is like, is anybody being paid to that degree? If that
The judges' salaries are listed in here.
Oh, they are, okay.
They are in here as well.
Okay.
They're
okay.
they're good.
Okay, well, I'll dig into that. I do.
Yeah, the judges' salaries are in there too. Yeah, you're actually, and like the state's attorneys and the county sheriffs, their salaries are all in there set in statute. And, when you look at state's attorneys, you see, it's a little bit more, stratified based, stratified, is that right? Stratified, yeah. Stratified based on, Chittenden County.
Yeah.
State attorney makes more
Yeah.
than say. So based on, kind of the scope of their work.
Yeah.
And then you see that also with the elected officials in the executive branch as well. The governor makes more, the attorney general, and then the other three make less. And in fact, some of those folks don't make as much as like a secretary of an agency might.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court judge, justice. Almost.
Okay.
Yeah, so overall, my looking at it, similar to Senator Watson's, is that the way the formula is created, even though I learned from Commissioner Gresham that doesn't automatically apply where you do like this. So if you negotiate a 3% raise with the unions, not everybody in the example gets 3% plus the 1.9 step. But over time, as you're applying the same percentage to higher wages, the gap is getting larger between the average classified employee and the average exempt employee. And it's particularly if you don't think, because some exempts are exempt, but they're not that high paid. So I wondered if there's any concern from HR or from the administration of because we're just compounding how much the highest paid positions get paid because we're doing 3% on a higher number or whatever the percentage is. And is there anything I think when I brought this up, somebody said, well, the classification system might help to fix this. So that's why I wanted to learn about that. I don't know if you understand what you understand what I'm saying is a concern.
The reclassification system could help, but it really doesn't impact the pay charts themselves. The pay charts are bargained. So when we bargain a 3% increase, that's the same thing that you're talking about, that compression or the highest people get a bigger, the pay grade 32. Let's say they're making $70 an hour is going to get a higher percentage increase, or they get the same percentage, but it's more money than the person that's making, $20 an hour.
So it happens within the class
So it happens.
too,
Right,
right?
yep,
But I would go further than that, and I say just mathematically. If you take a lower number.
Yeah.
And you add 5% to it every year. Eventually, you're gonna catch up with a higher number if you're only adding 3% to that. So eventually,
Right.
so you're getting wage compression.
But are we only adding 3% when you can add 5%? So if you negotiated 5%, I mean, I learned that you weren't. I thought it was just kind of automatic. Like we negotiated 5%, so all exempt are getting 5% plus 1.9 for the step value, even though they don't have steps. And that's what means like you're going to get a widening gap. And then the data that I looked at, the gap has changed over the last like 10 years. It wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be because the administration isn't always applying that universally across all of the exempt positions. But I'm still wondering if there's just kind of a inherent issue with the formula that you're always just going to apply the same percentage instead of the same dollar, for example.
right,
Oh.
that's,
If all exempts got the ABI plus what the average step amount is
Right.
every year, then you're right, there would be no compression, but that hasn't been the case.
Right.
So there has been compression.
Well, that's not shown in the data that I looked at, like there has, from the highest to the median, that there is that's widening. Because I just because you're just doing a percentage on a larger number, even if you do 5% on the classified and 3% exempt, I don't know if that makes up the difference between $40 an hour and
And the-
$120.
and the piece of the exempt salary also is, so there are salaries that are listed in Pay Act, and there are also a lot of salaries that aren't in Pay Act. So, what the titles being private secretary and principal assistant,
Right.
those are kind of, and those are kind of the official statutory titles, but those are like an executive staff assistant or somebody that's doing executive director. So there's other roles and titles that are exempt employees that are not at that executive pay, that are more in line with what various pay grades across the classified pay spectrum. Attorneys are also, they're on a pay plan, but they're also exempt employees. So those the authorization there is the ability to work within their pay plan and provide them with salary increases as well. So there's not, it's while what you're seeing what's listed, and that's, the legislature kind of putting limits on the highest paid employees. There are still employees that we need to have treatment across the pay spectrum.
Right.
So it's not the treatment of just the highest paid employees.
That gives you the flexibility.
Yeah.
And then something I didn't understand is that, so as these, the numbers that are in the Pay Act, those are the base goes up by the percentage plus the 1.9, even though they might not get paid that. In the Pay Act, like a commissioner or secretary, just by formula, the base will be increased by that, even if they don't end up getting paid that dollar. Is that right? Is that correct?
We accounted for that amount in the dollars that
When you just look at the number
right.
for whatever,
When Jared crunched the numbers, that's what he based the full dollar amount on. That's what he based the request for. Yeah.
and so for the commissioner, this is the for a commissioner or secretary, the number, the base.
Well, actually, I don't know if Doug is still on, but
Yeah.
I think that base 100% is, we typically do see that as the floor for a commissioner. But is that?
And so that's just by formula moving up.
Right.
By whatever the,
Yes, yes. So the base salary goes up by the across the board increase plus the 1.9%. Whether the people go up by that amount is up to the secretary and the governor.
and then, so there could be positions being paid less than is in base salary.
We have to pay the minimum.
Uh,
So if that increase the base if someone's below that, we have to bring them up.
So those are going up the full negotiated percentage plus the 149.
Correct.
Now, that's where you're not getting the wage compression because it's just a compounding of a, and as we go further out, you'll have an exponential delta between those two things because the two numbers will be slowly getting further apart. So but I think that's a concern for the legislature and how we write this language. Like, do we want that to continue indefinitely? Can we agree that there's a problem if we do, or do we wait for reclassification, or do we just do something different?
Yeah.
And so that's my general concern, which I don't know if you have anything to say about that. But I understand the other positions, the administration can not pay them, or they can just say, I don't want to get the pay that much. Like either the electeds or the commissioners. Do they have the ability to not take it? There's a question about who can say no to their pay.
I think that, if I ask for a pay cut, the secretary would let me have one.
Okay.
To answer your question, the Secretary of Administration sends out a memo late in the prior fiscal year saying, for exempt employees, you may anticipate getting the ABI, and we are not passing on the additional 1.9%.
The base will go up.
So that goes up.
So if they're above the base, then they may not get it, but the base will go up.
Whatever the ABI is. It's, in my experience, I think there's been only 1 year. There was a year.
Yeah, there was a year.
We had a tight year when no one got anything.
Right.
And we just didn't have the money for it. In fact, there was a year back long before I got here. They actually.
So when people say that they're getting that pay, they might not be getting it because they might be higher than the base already. So, but the base is always going to go up the percentage plus the
Right.
1.9.
And we have had times where to put people up because that base went up. I think rare instances like if the secretary said people are going to get 3%, but the base went up 3% plus 1.9%, we have to bring that person up.
Right. Okay. And then if there's if somebody leaves, if there's a commissioner that's getting more than the base, and they leave and a new person comes in, do they get what the old commissioner got? Do they go to the base or just depend wildly on the person that you're hiring to that?
The secretary has us do an analysis for each position, and we try to have our salaries for our secretaries and commissioners and deputies kind of in alignment with each other. So there's a salary comparison that's done to figure out what the best place is for them to slot in there.
So is it true that that's not done for the classified employees? So this is what I heard. So I just want this correct. Like if you're you have a classification and you've been there for 20 years and you get to the end of the pay chart, you retire to hire a new person. That new person goes back to step one of that classification.
Unless they're hired into range.
Unless they're hired in a range. But that doesn't happen for a commissioner or secretary. They don't like to go back. There isn't like a continuum of that kind of commissioner or secretary involvement.
Yeah, it's kind of it's more based at the executive level. It's really based on the job. It's like, hey, you can be hey, come in, you can be the secretary, and maybe if you stick around 2 more years, you can make 50% more than that. For a 2-year appointment, that's not very attractive, probably.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. Well, that was the formula thing about the base thing that I just had noticed that I wondered about. Did you have other questions?
And that's the same formula that's used for all the exams across state
Right.
government,
Yeah.
legislators as well.
Right. So my question is, do we want to continue to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
I think my follow-up question, sorry, can you say it one more time in terms of who that applies to, who that formula applies to?
The formula applies to anybody that is not a part of a classified. So it's the people who are covered by the collective bargaining agreements plus the people where we extend the collective bargaining agreements to. So the secretary, so the people in human resources, per statute can't be members of the union, but the pay scales and those, and also for managerial employees, they also, they are on the same pay charts. And then anybody else that's not in those pay charts, so it's attorneys, commissioners, deputy commissioners, principal assistants, corrections, facilities, superintendents, executive directors, judges.
And in the case of, either the governor or the judicial branch, well, I have more questions about the judicial branch, I suppose, but the governor's, that formula ends up setting the ceiling as opposed to the floor. Is that accurate?
For the ones who are set in statute, that is the ceiling
The elected.
of the elected
Okay,
judges, people on boards and commissions.
but that's how we arrive at that.
Yeah.
Value.
That's how that increases over time.
Okay, and so does that also would apply then to the judicial branch?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
The judicial branch is more, the most of their exempt employees, their salaries are mostly in statute. Well, I think they're all exempt in judiciary. There are no classified employees in judiciary, but they're still employees that are covered by collective bargaining agreement, even though they're not the classified service.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And you know when this started? If that we would do this one.
I'm gonna
About 20 years ago?
send that to Doug, the question. I don't know if you can answer that. Do we know when?
A long time ago. I don't know.
And if we were to ask you to look into that, would that be
I don't know where we could, I'm
Right.
not sure
Well,
where we have in in your workforce report, you have salary increases back until like 2000, I think is in the workforce report. And Doug's been around a while. It's, that would be before his time.
But I wonder, not when it started, but the way, is that the best way to do it still today?
Yeah.
Like, with that, could that be something we add here, reclassification?
I mean, we could look at that. That is not included in
Right.
$1.575 million. But, a few years ago, when the corrections bargained a new pay chart. The first year was a new pay chart bargain, and then the second year, they bargained $1 an hour increase rather than a percentage increase.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a more equitable,
Right.
in my opinion, solution because everybody got the dollar rather than the lower paid people got
40 cents.
Yeah.
40 cents and the higher paid people got 80 cents.
Yeah.
But that's not, that's something that's subject to bargaining regarding the time. You can't tell them that that's the only way we'll do it.
Yeah, no, I was glad that the union did that. You agreed on it. Anybody else have any other questions this time? So we might think of something that will pass by you, but we might not.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, we are here to help.
Thank you. Also here, so we might ask you a question at a later date, it's probably not today, because
Okay.
Michelle's on.
Okay.
But look at the image of that.
Yeah.
Letting them how that works and things of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Sorry, we didn't. Okay, so now we're gonna switch to H410 build ovens. What do we call it? What is the committee? What was it committee?
Recommitted?
No, it wasn't recommitted either. It was ascended.
It was essentially.
Appropriations. Referred to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were referred to Bill H10, so. So child, tell us what it is.
Sure. So good afternoon. Thanks for having me. For the record, Michelle Childs, Office of Legislative Counsel. And we're going to go over just quickly H410. There was a very small technical language amendment the judiciary made, but it doesn't affect anything substantively.
Yeah.
So I'll just talk to you a little bit in generality about what it does.
Is there even a fiscal note for this? Like, there's so little fiscal note. There is.
Amy, did you say there is not? There is. Okay, I couldn't remember. It's all starting to blur together, but I touched base with Chris this morning. The bill is focused on collection of criminal justice data, and for the purpose of being able to inform policymakers about what is kind of a snapshot of how things are looking as to bail, as to sentencing, when people are incarcerated, things like that, to inform your decision making here. What the bill does is it creates a new chapter within Title 13, your criminal justice title, for kind of parking all of these different studies and data that's collected. And there's a new definition of recidivism that's adopted in the proposal. There is currently a definition of recidivism in Title 28 in your corrections title, but that was adopted many years ago, and the testimony was consistently from the crime research group as well as Department of Corrections that definition is not really of any value to them and has not been used. And so section 1 of the bill creates a new definition of recidivism. And I realize you guys are the money committee. I don't know how deep you want me to talk about any of the policy.
Just talk us about the money. Plus, we have 2 people on judiciary.
All right. Well, the money's pretty easy. So what it does is, in this particular one, is it requires the Statistical Analysis Center, which is essentially every state has one for the collection of data. And ours in Vermont is the Crime Research Group, who I'm sure you're probably pretty familiar. And
we know that exist.
Right. Well, they're very helpful for us down the hall in judiciary with providing this sort of information. And so it directs them to be doing 3 annual reports. And so it would be ongoing. So the appropriations obviously is just for FY27 for that year, but the language in the bill does create an annual reporting requirement by April 1st of each year. And there's a few different categories for those reports. One is on bail rates. Another one is on recidivism. Third is on arrests and clearance rates. And then the fourth is looking at the kind of the top 20 crimes that are charged in Vermont, looking at various data around sentencing for those 20 crimes. And then the bill directs anybody who has data to be sharing it with CRG to be able to produce the annual
That's
reports.
the CRG crime
Research.
Crime Research Group. They are the Statistical Analysis Center for Vermont. So I know this gets confusing because they refer to it as SAC. And then when I used that term somewhere else, they were like, that's not SAC.
Right.
This is SAC.
Right.
So it's a little confusing.
Is it a private group or is it part of government?
What is
The crime,
the Crime Research Group?
are they like a consulting firm or are they like a?
DPS contracts with them. I don't know actually.
They always contract those like
Yes,
forever. There's nobody else
they have
doing.
been, as long as I've been here. That's always the group that when y'all have questions and say, we need some sentencing data on X, Y, Z, and those are the folks who call. Usually. And so I don't know about maybe Amy can talk about the existing relationship between the state and their budget, but I don't know,
Okay.
sorry.
That's fine.
There's also some provisions in here that as part of the annual reports, there's collecting demographic data when that data is available and include that in the reports. And so at the end for the appropriation, in section 4, it's for FY27. There's a certain amount of money appropriated from the general fund to DPS for contracted support related to the Vermont Statistical Analysis Center. And then you see the different provisions. So 10,000 for the bail rate report, 10,000 for the annual recidivism report, 1,000 for the arrest and clearance rates, and 4,000 for the annual sentencing report. So $25,000. And my understanding from JFO is that while this money is not in the big bill, it is accounted for in all the various other money
Right.
bills that are moving
And
around.
have they been doing this in the past? 'Cause
These particular
Yeah.
reports, no.
These are new.
These are new reports. There is a provision in Title 28 that has a variety of different reports that are to be done on every 3 years, but that's kind of being reconsidered. And part of that is they want to be getting these particular ones on an annual basis. Because these are kind of the reports that will be most helpful in terms of making some decisions that we have.
Yeah, I can see one. And so how is the money accounted for?
It's,
Just like in public safety budget?
no, it's accounted for sort of on the bottom line of the money available for you to appropriate. So we set aside some money for this, even though the bill appropriate, 410 appropriates the money. And we're
So-
accounting for that.
Okay, you're accounting for it and that's on the list, sorry.
Yes,
It's like, if we were to pass it with the money in there, it wouldn't affect our bottom line because you kind of already put it,
that's right.
kind of assuming.
And if you look at our web report, it's identified as number of House bills that have money appropriated in the bill, but we're accounting for it.
Because this passed the House after the House passed the budget.
It all happened at the same time.
So for the House budget, we could.
That's right.
With it. Okay,
Well, it's not in the H 951.
but they accounted.
They accounted for the dollars.
Kind of like with H90 last.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments you have? Lon? Any questions? On 410? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to pass the bill favorably. So moved. The clerk will put. The assistant clerk will take it easy. With me so stressed out. Working tax day tomorrow.
Hey, did you wait till today to do your taxes?
No,
Good.
Oh, yeah, these aren't, no names on this one.
Oh, they give you, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can you remember all our names?
I can remember the name, not the order.
Usually I grab one that's printed out. I grab one
Not the order. I don't think the order matters.
was angry, so either.
Bring
Oh,
that as amendment, or so you don't attach that to the ongoing.
The chair is last. Yeah, that's,
I see you sent it to him also, if I would have received it.
I don't think it matters less than the chair goes last.
You go last.
I had no problem.
You don't get.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the
Oh,
assistant
I
clerk.
wanna go-
It doesn't, that doesn't call their name out.
There's a series of.
No.
All right, then. I'll go first. Senator Lyon.
Oh, good, yes.
Senator Brennan, yes. For me, I'm writing as I go. Senator Westman,
Uh-huh.
Well,
I know.
I don't know if that one.
Can't even fully commit.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Gorst.
Yes.
Oops. Senator Kirschland,
Yes. Without explanation.
without explanation.
Okay,
Thank you. Excellent.
thank you.
Bill.
Yep, didn't have the purpose, that guy's spot.
I know, and I only paid $5,000. You should have.
Yeah. Just come around.
It's almost de minimis.
Yes, almost a million.
All for it.
I'll have the.
Yeah.
You're presenting Bill tomorrow.
I could go on those down for a motion.
No, if there's another bill that you're presenting. Your name's again.
Do it today, but it get referred to appropriations,
Oh.
so that's gonna go on the notice count,
So
so
you're-
you'll do it Thursday.
I see, so you're reporting this for judiciary.
Yes.
We could do a pending notice. Pending entry on the
I just
action.
printed all my papers. She just sent me the recidivism. I said, so
I'm not gonna give these guys any ammunition, okay?
So the Secretary of State is gonna be here to, 30. I can tell you, do a preamble to the committee discussion. So Emily will be here, I think, at that time. And we have a new spreadsheet that basically has everything on it. It has what the governor wanted, has everything the House did. It has the Senate bills that we took all the money out of so far. And is there anything else in there? There's some other things floating out there. There might be other ideas that committee members have. That's it on his meeting. But right now, I think you'll see in the spreadsheet, it's like $30 million. Over.
So it's swag.
To pass the balanced budget, we have to cut 30 million or find 30 million.
Spend 30 million.
And so we'll look at, just so you can see kind of what we're dealing with. The goal is balance by Friday. See if there's anything, start thinking about things that you think we don't want to do, that are in there. Things that are high priority, and then anything that doesn't want to come in. Yes.
I'm wondering, not having seen the spreadsheet, but in the amendment that was proposed on Friday, there's a different source for the 2.32 that goes to free community grants.
Yes.
Rather than the general grant. So that would add 2.3.
I would say it's 2.3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
We're down to 28. You already got it down to 28.
This was,
So,
Yes, Senator Westman.
So, yeah, because you save the money to, on that, because the governor's budget had the full 16 million.
Yeah, so we're there's the T bill, which has some appropriations from the general fund in it that we're gonna have to, which I don't think those are on the list, so those are additional. The institutions is dealing with the capital bill, which has the cash fund. So we want to that could change a little bit, and that could affect the general fund. So some things will be in play a little bit. So
Right, our committee will have tomorrow. I'm not represented today
right.
because I can't talk.
Yeah, if you're feeling better. Yeah, and I will look through I did get letters from other committees for emails. I looked through them pretty quickly, and I think everything I saw in there was in a bill. Nothing was new, although I think one of them, like the farm viability fund, I think it's called, or security fund, that wasn't from the bill class last year. Yeah. So that was in a couple of the letters. But other than that, I think everything that people have asked for are things that we've seen around the list, but I'll double check. So unless there's any comments or questions about that from this, we're going to be on break. The Secretary of State has